Okay, welcome to the continuing education program for Cal North. This is Matt Buckman. I'm the Director of Referee Development here in Northern California, and we're going to go over handball tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the new laws, and then go and watch towards the end of our time together a couple of video examples. The purpose of this webinar is really just a bit of a refresher for handball, particularly now that we have some new laws to consider, or at least some revised laws, hopefully make it a little bit easier for us to call handball when we're out on the field. But we're going to go through the law a little bit, refresh our memory of what the handball law is, and then we will watch some videos towards the end that will hopefully help you begin to decipher a little bit how we want to call handball out on the field. So just really quickly, again, to make sure everybody can hear me, please click the raise your hand icon. Wonderful, thank you. A couple of quick housekeeping items. Due to the number of people on the call, we don't have it enabled for you to be able to speak, so nobody will be able to get on and talk on this call. However, I would please encourage you to use one of two methods of communicating with me to ask questions. One is the Q&A feature. If you've used it before, you should be able to see that on your screen where you can type in questions. The other is the chat feature. So what I would request is that if you have an actual question that you would like answered, please use the Q&A feature. If you have a comment you would like to make, please use the chat feature. Do not make general comments in the Q&A, because that requires me to go in and clear out the comment and respond to it. So if you just want to make a general comment, please use the chat feature. You're also welcome to ask questions through the chat if you would like, or you can use the Q&A feature. Either is fine with me when questions are to be asked. Feel free to chime in whatever you'd like with your questions, and when we get to the end of a segment, I will do my best to answer all of them. Okay, so let us move forward. Tonight, we're going to do a little bit of review of the handball laws directly from the laws of the game, so you can see how it's written and we can interpret it a little bit or analyze it a little bit. And then we will see some videos at the end of our evening, and then we'll leave a little bit of time for a general Q&A at the very end. So, from the 2019-20 IFAB laws of the game, just a bit of a refresher here on handball. First, it is an offense if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand and arm, including if they move their hand and arm towards the ball. So basically, if the ball touches the hand and it's deliberately done, then we want to call handball here. So the first question is, handball is based on intent. Is that correct? The answer to that is no. We can never know the intent of a player. So we have to be careful to remove our understanding of their intent, which we can never actually know because we don't know what a player intends to do. So intention is not something we want to think about. Intent is not something we want to think about. We want to judge if we can determine if that action was deliberate. And we'll get in and we'll talk about a couple of things to help understand how we determine if an action was deliberate. We'll get into that detail here. So a deliberate touch on the ball with the hand or arm, including if they're moving the hand and arm towards the ball. So if they're moving towards the ball and the ball hits their arm, we want to call that a handball. They gain possession or control of the ball after it has touched their arm, and then either they score a goal or they create a goal-scoring opportunity. So if someone hits the ball, or their arm hits the ball, and they score a goal directly from it, or they create a goal-scoring opportunity, then we will want to call that a handball, even if it's accidental. So this is an important thing here. Even if it's accidental, if they score a goal or if they create a goal-scoring opportunity, we want to call that a foul. And then lastly, if they score a goal from their hand and arm, even if it's by the goalkeeper. So again, a lot of the same topic here. If they gain possession of the ball and then score a goal or create a goal-scoring opportunity, even if it's accidental, we want to call that a handball. Getting a couple of questions here. I'm actually going to hold off on answering them until we get to the end of the laws of the game. It is usually an offense if a player touches the ball with their hand and arm when the hand or arm was in an unnatural position or has made their body unnaturally larger. So again, if their hands are extended out away from their body and it touches their hand and their arm, even if it's accidental, we're going to call a foul here. If the hand and arm is above the shoulder, and again, making their body unnaturally bigger, but if their hand and arm is above the shoulder and it touches their hand or arm, we want to call a foul here more often than not, because it's not normal for the hands to be above the shoulders when you're playing the game of soccer. So we don't want to allow the ball to hit the hand, even if it's on accident, if it's above the shoulder. There is one exception to that, and I actually have a video on this that we'll look at in a little while. If the player deliberately plays the ball and it accidentally comes down and hits their arm, even if it's above the shoulder, we don't want to call that. So the most common one is if a player jumps up to head the ball, they head the ball, and then it hits their own arm, which is up high because they jumped. We don't want to call that a handball because that was not something that was a deliberate action, and their hands are in a natural position for having jumped up in the air. So there's one exception to that, but generally speaking, if the hands and the arms are above the shoulder, we're going to want to call a foul for handball. It's important to remember that for these things, distance doesn't matter. If you were involved in any kind of training where you were taught the distance that the ball travels before it hits the arm is a consideration, that was something that is still considered for different kinds of handballs, but for the ones we're talking about now, where the hand and arm has made their body unnaturally bigger, or the arm's up above the shoulder, the distance the ball travels for that doesn't matter because they had their hand in an unnatural position, so we don't want to call that a foul. So we've had a couple of questions here. If they move their arm up to protect themselves, is that a handball? So I'm going to ask you to hold off on that one because we're going to talk about something here in a second that will hopefully answer that question for you. So if your question about blocking the face with their hands, we'll talk about that here in a second. Except for the above offenses. So again, let's go back and look at those. We have a hand or arm in an unnatural position or above the shoulder, or if they deliberately touch the ball, or if they gain possession and create a promising goal scoring opportunity. Except for those, generally speaking, it's not going to be an offense if the ball comes directly from the player's own hand, head, or body, including the foot. So if a player plays the ball themselves and it pounces up and hits their own hand, we are not going to call that a handball. If it comes off the head or the body of another player who is close and the hands are in a natural position, we are not going to call that a foul. So again, the important thing to remember here is the difference between having the hands in a natural position and having the hands in an unnatural position. If the hands are in a natural position and they kick the ball into their own hand, or that somebody else who's close to them kicks or heads the ball into their hand, which is a natural position, we don't want to call a handball there. We really want to focus on when the hands or arms are in an unnatural position. And then lastly, if the hand is close to the body and does not make the body unnaturally bigger, we do not want to call a handball. And that sentence right there at the bottom of your screen is what directly relates to somebody putting their hands up in front of their face. If their hands and arms are close to the body, and usually if you're protecting your face, your hands and arms are going to be close to your body. And if your hands and arms don't make your body unnaturally bigger, we're not going to call the handball. And so if they put their hands up in front of their face and the ball would have hit their face were it not for their hands, then they have not made their body unnaturally bigger, and therefore we are not going to call a foul against somebody who is protecting their face. So to answer your question simply, the answer is no. If somebody protects their face from being hit, we're not going to call it a foul. But only if their hands are close to their face and because their hands are not making their body unnaturally bigger. Generally speaking, if the ball hit somebody's hands and it would have hit another part of their body were it not for their hands, we're probably not going to call a foul because it's doubtful that the ball would have gotten past them, which means their body was not made unnaturally bigger by the hands. So The last sentence here is an important one. If the hand or arm is close to the body and does not make the body unnaturally bigger, we are not going to call a foul. Any questions at this point? We have a very, very good and interesting question here from a clearly thoughtful individual. What is the difference between handball and handling? There is no difference. The laws of the game used to say handling, now they say handball. I think it goes back and forth at different times. Doesn't matter. Those are both the same thing. Handball and handling are the same thing. So very good question from a very thoughtful individual. If anybody did watch the Manchester City game from this past weekend, as somebody has commented here, that is a great example of one of these new law changes where the ball hits somebody in the hand, redirects, and goes to somebody who gets a goal scoring opportunity as a result. Even though it was accidental, it's still not fair to the game, and so now per the laws of the game we call that a foul. Question here says this does not seem to say anything about being in a natural or unnatural position. The word unnaturally is right there on the screen. So for those of you that can read on the screen there, unnaturally means having the hand in a natural or unnatural position. What if they move their arms up to their chest and the ball hits their arms, but they had time to drop it and control it off their chest? This, at the grassroots level, is going to be where you have to use your best judgment. If they're little kids and they're naturally going to be protective of their bodies, then we have to not call a foul against them, particularly at the younger referee grassroots level. We don't want to call a foul against someone who is sort of intuitively putting their hands in front of their body. Question here, what if it's 35 yards away and someone puts their hands up to protect their face and then after the rebound gets possession? Do we do a drop ball? No. The answer to that is a foul. If someone gains possession of the ball and gets a promising goal-scoring opportunity from a handball, no matter if it's protecting themselves or not, we are going to call a handball there. Question here, if two players on opposite teams touch the ball with their hands at the same time, whose ball is it, or would you just let them play? That I don't think has ever happened in the history of soccer, so I'm not going to answer that one. Just call whoever you think hit it first or whoever initiated their contact or whoever had their hands in the most unnatural position. Another question here, is this webinar only covering handball? Yes, per the cover of the screen and everything about it. Yes, we're only talking about handball tonight. Okay, so moving on. An indirect free kick is awarded if the goalkeeper inside their own penalty area commits any of the following offenses. So we all know the goalkeeper is allowed to handle the ball. There are a couple of times when the goalkeeper is not allowed to pick up the ball, specifically if they touch the ball with their hand and arm after releasing it and before it has touched another player. So if they throw the ball, they've already got the ball in their hand, they throw the ball, and then they run and they pick it up again before it's touched somebody else, that is not allowed to happen, and we're going to give an indirect free kick for that. A goalkeeper is not allowed to keep the ball in their hands, put it on the ground, and then pick it up again a second time without it touching to somebody else. And then touches the hand, with the ball with the hand or arm after it has been deliberately kicked back to them by a teammate, or if they're receiving it directly from a throw-in. So a goalkeeper is not allowed to pick the ball up if it's been passed back to them by their own teammate, or if they're receiving it directly from a throw-in. And just to be clear, a pass back in this is defined by a pass by the foot. If a player hits it off their thigh or their knee or their chest or their head back to the goalkeeper is allowed to pick it up. Only a pass back from the foot is not allowed to be picked up by a goalkeeper who's had the ball passed to them by their own team. And then from a throw-in as well, not allowed to have that. We have a question here. What about the younger kids? The laws of the game cover the younger kids. So the goalkeeper is not allowed to pick a ball up if it has been passed back to them by a teammate. The penalty for that is an indirect free kick at the spot, like every other foul, where the ball was handled by the goalkeeper. Question here, just for clarification, when a goal is scored from a goalkeeper that has handled the ball, does this refer to the attacking goalkeeper that decides to move into the penalty area? So a goalkeeper is only allowed to touch the ball inside their own penalty area with their hands. And so if they're in the other penalty area, they're not allowed to touch the ball with their hand. So they cannot hand the ball, or they cannot touch the ball with their hand. It will be a foul. Question here, even if the pass back is an intentional of the thigh or the foot, only a pass back from the foot is not allowed. Any other kind of pass back from the thigh, from the chest, from the head, those are all legal and the goalkeeper can pick the ball up. Just a pass back from the foot. If a teammate intentionally heads the ball to their goalkeeper, can the goalkeeper pick it up? The answer is yes. Any other questions? How about a throw-in from the opposing team? Yes. They are allowed to pick up a throw-in from the opposing team. Notice it says they're receiving it directly from a throw-in taken by a teammate. That's the only thing that's not allowed. Any other questions? Okay, moving us along then. Some considerations to think about when making these decisions. At the end of the day, was the hand in a natural or an unnatural position? Unnatural, this is where we get to a little bit of just understanding the game of soccer. I'm hopeful that a lot of you have played the game. You know what kind of positions your body gets into when you're playing the game, if it's running, if it's where you're where your hands would naturally be if you're defending, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all things that we need to be aware of and think about as former players. And if somebody has their hand in a natural position, more often than not, we're not going to want to call a handball unless, of course, it results in a goal or a goal-scoring opportunity for the opponent. Otherwise, if the hand's in a natural position, we're pretty sure we're not going to address that one. We're not going to worry about it. Give me just a second here. Another question, what if the goalie slips or muffs his kick? We'll cover that in a different session. Anything related to goalkeepers messing up their kicks, we'll talk about in a different session. That's more at the next level to think about. So, getting back to our considerations, natural or unnatural is a critical one for us. Hands close to the body or any additional movement. So again, this is where we start to talk about how do we not call a handball against somebody. If their hands, generally speaking, are close to their body, we're not going to want to call a handball. Again, unless it leads to a goal being scored by the person whose hand touched it or their team. But otherwise, if their hands are close to their body, we're not going to worry about calling a handball, because at the end of the day, we're all born with hands and arms. We can't do anything about that. We have them. So as long as we're not trying to make our bodies bigger, as long as we're trying to keep them out of the way, we're not going to call handball against people. If there are additional movements, meaning if the hands were close but then they move away or they move towards the ball, that's where we can start to identify that we have a handball. So if the ball gets kicked and the hand or the arm moves a little bit and touches the hand, now we probably are going to have a handball. We have a question here on goal kicks. Can a teammate from the goalie receive the ball in the box now? Yes, now they can. That is not a handball question, but yes, now the ball does not have to leave the penalty area before it can be played. The ball is in play as soon as it has been touched off of a goal kick. And then the movement of the hand towards the ball, not the ball towards the hand. So again, when we're calling handball, the two primary things we're looking for are, is the hand in the natural or unnatural position, and did the hand move towards the ball? If the hand doesn't move towards the ball, but it's in a natural position, we're not going to worry about calling handball. If the hand doesn't move towards the ball, but it's in an unnatural position, then we're probably going to call handball. Regardless, if the hand moves towards the ball, we're probably going to call handball if it touches the hand. Any questions on these considerations? All right, the last one to think about is, do they make their body bigger? If they extend their hands and their arms out quite a bit and their body is made bigger, they take up more space and it hits their arm as a result, we want to call that a handball. Again, we're trying to think about what's fair and what's not fair. People keeping their hands close to the body, they're trying their best not to have the ball hit their hands, so we don't want to call a foul against them. People that are making their bodies really big by sticking their arms out to the sides or by having their hands up above their head, those are the people that we want to call handball against. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, then we're going to take a look at some video examples. I will play this a couple of times, and then I'm going to launch a poll. For those of you that have not done video clip analysis before, I'll play the video a couple of times. I will stop it at what we call the moment of truth, which is the moment that you have to make the decision, and I'll let you look at it for a second. And then I'm going to launch a poll. You should have something pop up on your screen where you can vote either yes, this is a handball, or no, this is not a handball. I'll give you about 30 seconds to make your decision and submit your answer. And then we'll talk about the clip once we've done that. Okay? So here we go. First clip. So we'll watch it one more time. And then we'll watch the replay. So that's our moment of truth. For those of you, if maybe the screen's a little bit jumpy. Whoops. Give me a second here. Play it for you one more time, and I'll go in slow motion. All right, here we go. Watch the player on the right jump. Okay, so now you've had a chance to look at it, and here comes the poll. Go ahead and submit your answers on if you think this should be a handball. Give you about 10 more seconds or so. All right, I'm going to end the poll and I'll show you the results. So most of us think, yes, this is a handball. A handful of us say, no, this is not. For those of you that said, yes, this is a handball, you are correct. The reason this is a handball is, again, because the arms and the hands are extended out away from their body. The player has stuck her arms way out to the side. Her arms are above her shoulders, as we talked about just a couple of minutes ago, and she's not really protecting herself here. Again, if the hands had been tucked into the body or had been right in front of her face, no problem, but because she has reached her hands way out to the side, way out past her face, we want to call this a handball. This is a deliberate action. She's put her arms out there on purpose. And again, the two big things to think about are, is this a natural position for the hands to be? That is a clear no. And has she made her body bigger? The answer is yes. So again, if her hands are tucked into her chest really close and the ball just happens to hit them, then probably no, we don't have a handball. But because her arms are stretched out way in front of her, away from her body, and she's making her body bigger, we are going to call a handball for this one. Any questions on this one? Okay, then I'll move us on to the next one. It's a little hard to see, I know, but we can look at the position of the hands here and the arms. Watch it one more time. So here we go. We'll watch it in slow motion. And that's where the ball hits her. So I will launch the poll here in just a second. And let's hear your answers. Give you about 10 more seconds. Okay, and we'll launch the poll. Or excuse me, I'll show the results. So we have 89% of us saying no handball, and a handful of us saying yes, this is a handball. Again, most of you got this one correct. So this is not a handball for a couple of reasons. Now, I know it's a little hard to tell exactly where she got that ball in her body, but the main thing we want to look for are her hands in an unnatural position? The answer to that is no. She's trying to take this ball off the chest, so she puts her hands behind her when she jumps. The next big thing is does she make her body unnaturally bigger? And I think the answer here is no. Her hands are behind her. She's trying to get her hands out of the way, and the ball touches either her chest or the front of her shoulder. It's not really clear which. But either way, she's making a legitimate attempt to get her hands out of this play, to get her hands out of the way behind her so that the ball doesn't hit her hand or her arm. We don't want to punish players who are making an effort to keep their hand away from the ball. So in this case, this would not be a handball because she is not making her body bigger and her arms are in a very natural position for the play that she is trying to make. It's questionable whether the ball even hits her arm or not, but either way, she's making an effort to keep her hands out of this play, and short of cutting off her arms, I'm not sure what else she could possibly do with them, so we don't want to call a foul here for a handball. Any questions? If a player moves his hands toward the ball before it is kicked and it hits the player's hands after the kick, then it is a handball. That is correct if the hands are in an unnatural position. If the hand is in a natural position and the ball strikes it, we don't want to call a handball. Any other questions on this clip? All right, then I will move us on to the next one. This is a faster one to pick up on. So I'm going to pause it here, and we'll watch the green player. So we can see her body position there, and we can see when the ball hits her arm. So I will go ahead and launch the next poll. And let's see what you got. Give you about 10 more seconds. Okay, and I'll share the results. About what I expected, actually. We're not quite split down the middle. 2/3 say yes, this is handball. 1/3 say no. So we'll spend a little bit more time talking about why this is a handball. So this is a handball. We do want to call this as a handball. And this right here, this still shot, gives us the best reason why we want to call a handball. So we have two considerations that we are looking at most frequently. One is, has the body been made unnaturally bigger? And are the hands in a natural or unnatural position? So while this is a really good defensive position for a basketball player, this is not a normal body position for a soccer player. Spreading your arms way out to the sides is not something a normal soccer player does. And this is the quintessential definition of making your body bigger so that the player can't get past you with the ball. She stretches her arms way out to the sides here to take up as much space as possible. And then when the ball gets kicked, you can see the other consideration we talked about, which is the hand moves down to block it. So we talked a little bit earlier about additional movement, and here is where you get that additional movement. So somebody here says, or a question we had says, it looks like she tried to get her hands out of the way. This is not a player who is trying to get their hands out of the way. This is a player who is using as much space as possible with their hands and then reacts to the ball being played lower than the position of her hands and lowers her arms to hit the ball. So you can see here the hand actually moves towards the ball here. She brings her hands down because the ball is going to go lower and she needs to stop the ball. And so this, because she has made herself bigger at the start of this play, the hands are not in a natural position, and she has made herself bigger. Even though this comes from a very close distance, the fact that she has made herself bigger and additionally moves her hands towards the ball, we want to call that a handball. Any questions on this? Question here from Eric, what if she turns to the side and the ball hits her upper arm? Doesn't matter, because the big part of this here, Eric, is her starting position. This is not a normal position for a player to put their hands in when they're defending. And so anytime you see someone stretched with their arms way out to the sides like this is them making themselves bigger. And if the ball hits their arm, we want to call a handball here. Any other questions on this clip? Great. We'll move us on to the next one. You'll get a replay, a better replay. I'm just going to let you play this one more time. One more time in real speed. All right, and then I'll give you the replay. Slow motion. Okay, so now I will launch the poll, and let's see what you got. This is a tough one. Couple more seconds. Okay. And I'll share the results. So about 80% of us say no handball and 20% of us say handball. So the answer to this one, as most of you has indicated, is no handball. And the reason for it is if you watch his motion of his arm as he jumps to block this ball, notice that his arm is tucked into his chest. It's close to his body. As he jumps, he keeps his arm close to his body. He keeps the arm tucked in the entire time, even up until when it hits his arm. So it definitely hits his arm, but the question is, has he made himself unnaturally bigger, and are his arms in a natural position? For someone jumping and blocking themselves, this is a very natural position, and this we would say is not a handball. What makes this really, really difficult, and this is why when we're refereeing, we actually have to look at the player before the ball hits their hand. So in this moment, you know a shot's going to get taken. You know nobody else is close to this player, which means there's not going to be any other foul. No one's going to trip him. No one's going to kick him, push him. Nobody's close enough for that, which means the only potential infraction you might have on this play is a handball by this player. And so you want to watch that player as the shot's being taken, not the ball. Because if you do that, you'll see this player jumping up with their arm close and tight to their body. The problem is if you're just watching the player take the shot and you follow the ball, what you're going to see is the ball hit the arm, and the force of the ball knocks the arm out to the side like this. And that's what your body, or that's what your brain is going to remember, is the arm out to the side. So if this player had jumped like this in the beginning with the arm stuck out to the side there and the ball had hit it, then yes, we have a handball, because in this position, This is an unnatural position, and this is making the body bigger. But it's the force of the ball that makes that reaction. When the ball actually strikes his arm, it's tucked into the body. So we need to be looking at this player ahead of time to see that he has jumped with his arm tight to the body. He has not extended it away from the body. It's in a natural position when the ball strikes it. We don't have a handball here. Question here, is this easy for the referee to call? Because we've had a lot of replays. No, it's not. That's why I said this is a really difficult clip. And as the referee, this is a tough decision. The thing that we have to train ourselves for is to be watching the player, this player, when this shot gets taken, not this player. Recognizing if we go back and we watch the, I'm going to take the poll off the screen here. Pardon me a second. If we go back to the beginning here, at the moment this guy takes this shot, there's nobody around him. So nobody's going to trip him. No one's going to push him. There's not going to be any other kind of foul. He's just going to take a shot. And so as referees, we have to then focus our attention on what the next potential decision might be. And in this scenario, it's a potential block shot or a handball, and we have to shift our focus to be able to see that. Because if we see him in real time jump with his body tight like that, then we have a chance of getting it right. But no, this is a very difficult decision to make. Any other questions on this clip? We just have a couple more to look at. It's one of my personal favorites. I'm going to fast forward us to the replay because it's hard to tell on that one. So as you can see, player slides. Ball strikes the hand. One more time. Ball strikes the hand. So I'll put the poll out here and see what you got. Couple more seconds. Okay. So 88% of us say this is a handball. 12% of us say no handball. The large majority of you are correct. We do want this to be a handball. The reason, primary reason being, again, the arm is not in a natural position. This, a ball above, arm above the head, is not a normal position. She has made her body bigger and in fact has blocked across with her hand because she stretched her arm out away from her head. So the big thing to think about again when we're looking at these decisions is the position of the hand and the arm. Is it close to the body or is it away from the body? If it's away from the body, a lot of times it's going to be a handball because they stuck their hands out there, they've made their body bigger. So in this scenario, unlike the last one where the player had the arm tucked really tight to the chest, this one the arm is outstretched, making herself bigger and thus blocking the cross. An arm stretched out like that is not a natural position for a defender. You want to have a handball here. Any questions on this one? Okay, so that's the end of our video analysis. So any other general questions on handball after we've looked at this for about 40 minutes now? Hopefully this has helped us reposition how we think about handball. Hopefully we're able now, when we're out on the field, to think about, is that hand in an unnatural position? Is that arm above the head? Is the body being made bigger by this? How do we want to handle this situation? So hopefully you'll be able to think about those two things. Again, if we're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of handball, is the hand in an unnatural position? Are they making their body bigger? Those are the things we really want to get to the bottom to. So thank you for joining us this evening. This presentation will be posted online if you want to go back and look at it. Otherwise, I thank everybody. I've not seen any additional questions. So thank you for joining, and have a good night.